Butcher Ding, a slaughter ballet. Ding the butcher slaughtered an ox for Wen Hui the ruler. He tore it with his hands, shoved it with his shoulders, whacked it with his feet, and hit it with his knees. The smacking and the crushing, the knife's hissing and slicing, all were perfectly in tune. Motions were in time with the Mulberry Grove dance, and sounds matched the Qingshou music. Wen Hui, the ruler, said, "Magnificent! How can skill reach such perfection?" Stowing his knife, the butcher said, "What I care about is the Tao, so I go a step further than skill. When I began slaughtering oxen, all I would see was oxen, but after 3 years, I wouldn't even see a whole ox anymore. These days, I approach them with the spirit, not looking at them with my eyes. My sense perception stops, and my spiritual determination goes to work. I rely on the natural structures to strike through the big cracks, lead through the big holes, follow through as it must be. I never cut through the thicker joints and sinews, and of course not through the big ones. Decent butchers change their knives yearly. They slash. Average butchers change their knives monthly. They hack. I've had my knife for 19 years now and slaughtered thousands of oxen with it. Its blade is just as good as a new one right off the whetstone. Those joints have space in between, and a knife's blade has no thickness. When what has no thickness goes into the in-between, there is surely more than enough room for the blade to ramble around at ease. This is why, after 19 years, my knife's blade is just as good as a new one right off the whetstone. Still, each time I encounter some gristle that I see is hard to handle, I hold back most cautiously. My eyes fixed on that spot, I come almost to a halt. Then I move the knife subtly, and in an instant the butchering has been done. The pieces lie on the ground like scattered soil. Presenting my knife, I stand, turning to face all 4 directions with an air of pride and satisfaction. Then I wipe the knife clean and put it away. Wen Hui, the ruler, said, "Splendid! I hear the words of Ding the butcher and understand how to nourish one's life." This story of a ritual slaughter may be regarded as more or less the mother of all the so-called Daoist knack stories that have attracted much attention through the ages. These stories typically describe peculiar artisans enacting their craft with miraculous skill. They are usually taken to be, if somewhat exaggerated, Daoist role model stories, intended to illustrate the incredible performance capacities resulting from Daoist exercise. Determined dedication to a Daoist cultivation regime of body and mind, it is suggested, will extraordinarily enhance one's physical and spiritual potential. Butcher Ding's explanation of his sublime slaughter makes ample use of major Daoist themes and concepts. Right away he points out that he's a man of the Tao and not just a regular craftsman. He claims some higher aspiration beyond mundane professional expertise. In an almost meditative state, he no longer relies on his senses. This state is described similarly to a line from the Tao Te Ching as a kind of seeing without looking. The butcher then speaks of his motion with Daoist imagery as a spontaneous and effortless flow, seeking out empty spaces and exerting strength without using force. Such avoidance of friction allows his knife to maintain its immaculate sharpness, symbolizing the pristine vitality that Daoist practitioners are supposed to preserve. What is more, in all its durability, the knife operates in the mode of rambling around at ease, or yo, the central notion of well-being in the Zhuangzi. The butcher's self-depiction as a Daoist master is emphatically confirmed by Lord Wen Hui at the end of the story. He credits Ding for making him understand the art of Yongsheng, of nourishing life. This expression not only provided the chapter in the Zhuangzi in which the story occurs with its title, but became an emblematic term for the cultivation of vitality in Chinese culture. No wonder, then, that the story has been read as an iconic representation of Daoist practice. Such a reading, however, disregards the many incongruities woven into the text. Once these incongruities are taken note of, under the surface of a Daoist role model tale, a darkly humorous social critique emerges. Sacrificial rituals involving the slaughter of animals were a common event at the courts of early Chinese rulers. They adorned their rule with a religious aura, manifested their power and wealth, and aestheticized it, and also provided an occasion for lavish banquets and feasts, creating a bond between rulers and their feudal cliques. The Zhuangzi story of Ding the Butcher, however, grossly violates the standard etiquette of such rituals. As is mentioned in the first chapter of the Zhuangzi, the roles of ritual performers were strictly separated from butchers and cooks. The Butcher Ding story breaks this taboo and puts the gruesome kill right in front of the eyes of the ruler and of the readers of the story. As if in a Quentin Tarantino movie, a gory and unreal slaughter ballet unfolds. Quite shockingly, the beautiful artistic performances at the heart of a ritual banquet take on the form of the dismemberment of a huge living animal. The visual and emotional horrors of slicing up a body, splitting it apart, and splattering its blood bizarrely blend with the refined music and dance. The ritual slaughter of an ox is also the theme of another quite famous story about Zhuangzi. Here, Zhuangzi explains his refusal to take on a government job by comparing political officials with sacrificial oxen at court. They may be taken care of nicely for a time, but only to eventually get slaughtered. The message of this story blatantly contradicts the story of Ding the Butcher, who ceremoniously kills the oxen Zhuangzi himself desired never to become. Ding the Butcher was a legendary figure in early China, also known from other texts as a model of skill. However, just as with the equally legendary horse trainer Moeller, the Zhuangzi reverses the common evaluation of these figures. Rather than positive models of humans making good use of animals, they appear as destructive characters who violently kill or domesticate animals against their will. The butcher's long-term practice of his art has, ironically, spiritually elevated him to a level where he isn't even able to see an ox as a living being anymore. He has become all but blind to the life and suffering of others. And yet, Ding the Butcher undoubtedly has marvelous capabilities and describes himself as a Daoist virtuoso. The very fact, though, that he speaks in such a self-aggrandizing manner, his air of pride and satisfaction, and his arrogant claim to be a man of the Dao, sets him apart from most other protagonists of knack stories in the Zhuangzi, who are typically reluctant to speak. Ding the Butcher is an incongruent, satirically inverted Daoist master. He does not shun public office, but delights in being a ruler's slaughterer. Instead of avoiding the sphere of political ritual with its artifice and excess, he is at the center of it. Instead of being cautious with words, he boasts about his skills. Most incongruously, he teaches a ruler the art of nourishing life by means of a brutal killing. And the incongruous main symbol of this supposed art of nourishing life, highlighted throughout the story, and then at the end proudly presented to all sides, wiped clean of blood, and cautiously stored to be used again for the next slaughter with all its sharpness intact, is a butcher's knife. Once the grotesque incongruities of the story are taken into account, Ding the Butcher no longer appears as a Daoist virtuoso, but as a Daoist sellout. He put himself in the service of the rulers of his time, which for good reason is labeled the Warring States period. Innumerable rulers fought constantly against one another, striving for power and wealth. Regular people were conscripted into armies or for large building projects. Punishments were frequent and harsh, and food shortages were no rarity. Rulers, however, often managed to nourish their own lives well by waging war, the devastating effects of which early Daoist texts often lament. The symbol of the knife in Butcher Ding's hand can be taken to represent the endless slaughter and suffering inflicted by rulers of the time on their people. Like that knife, the rulers' warfare seemed never to lose its efficiency and produced an endless supply of fresh dead meat. At the same time, elaborate rituals provided an ornamental framework, supplying the ruling class with aesthetic splendor and spiritual elevation, allowing them to feel perfectly at ease in the midst of the horror they created.